Just those simple pleasures. It doesn't need to be an exotic trip, just, face-to-face connection with friends and family and being able to make those plans and do more of that.
Perspective is everything. And something that seems like it's going to tear everything down only feels that way until that moment has gone.
Welcome to Work Inspired, a podcast where leaders in business, commercial real estate, technology, and design come together to discuss change, challenge, and opportunity in today's professional world. This show is powered by BOS, a leader in commercial interiors. The team of workplace experts at BOS is equipped and ready to help you navigate the path to your next workspace. Whether you're a seasoned leader or just starting out in your career, you're going to learn something new today. So sit back, relax, enjoy, and get ready to work inspired. Today's episode, we've got two very special guests, co-founders of Full Circle Brands. Heather Kauffman and Chitayat are here to talk about innovation, sustainability, and managing change. Let's dive right in. Work Inspired starts right now. Heather, Tal, thank you so much for being here today. So excited to talk about Full Circle Brands and everything that you guys are doing. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
So let's start ladies first. Heather, tell me your professional story, or maybe I'm sure there's a little bit of overlap, especially towards the full circle part, but tell me about your background. How did you get to where you're at today?
So I have, I guess, kind of a non-conventional entry into what we do. I actually originally started with an economics major working in public policy for the federal government. And I was focused on China, and I really loved the part of my job that was going to China and learning about the culture and global economy and international trade was fascinating. But I really felt being in the federal government was not the right place for me. So I quit and I moved to China. And then Tal and I had previously been friends. We had met through a mutual friend. And I was like, oh, there's this really great guy that I know. And we linked up and we just kind of started talking about, his background, which he'll get more into in product, and my passion for sustainability. It's always been a big part of who I am. Ever since I was a kid, I just kind of felt a personal responsibility to take care of the earth. And we really kind of, connected in the way we thought about what consumers should expect out of brands and products, and a different way to approach how, the things you use every day could be made. And, kind of made a big pivot in my career there and moved, we started this brand together and really had to learn everything from the ground up, and, creating a brand and a website and designing product, and, had some expertise in manufacturing and, setting up distribution. And so, really wasn't, working, I would say, towards this in a traditional way, but sort of, I think, found my calling in terms of taking, the combination of, really loving beautiful design and sustainability and bringing that to market, and being very fortunate to do that with my best friend here. So
that's awesome. We, in our industry, so you guys mostly create products for the home. Our business is more products for the working environment and the commercial space. But two very important pieces that you just said: design, beautiful design, and sustainability are key talking points in our industry. Design has been for a long time, but sustainability more so today than I've ever seen it. And so I'm interested. You said you lived in China and had some time over there. Did your experience in China have anything to do with your passion for sustainability? I know it's an important topic here in the United States, and there's a lot of work to do around sustainability. But what's the kind of the culture of sustainability in China like?
Yeah, I think, in different places you go, it's sort of interpreted a different way. I think in the US, we sort of live in a culture of consumerism and just more and just this culture of abundance. And we're okay with waste in a way that a lot of places in the world are not. I think there's other places in the world where it's really just ingrained in their daily lives to only take what you need, only use what you need, and not creating additional waste. And whether that motivation is for sustainability, I think there's just sort of an ingrained idea of, thinking about the people around you, and everybody sort of having sort of a common goal, and working towards a more sustainable lifestyle. And sustainability means, for the future, like making it last for the future. So it's not necessarily just about the earth. It's about like allocation of scarce resources. Right. And so some people are doing that for financial incentives, but I think it's really fascinating and inspiring to see how in other parts of the world, it's ingrained in everything they do, is to really make the most of the smallest amount of resources. And that's actually what brought me to China. My focus at Commerce was on environmental technologies. And so there was actually a lot happening in the market. And obviously they have a long way to go. We have a long way to go. But I think the interpretation of it in different parts of the world is really interesting.
Yeah, definitely. The drivers behind sustainable practices. I think that's really interesting. Tail, how about you? What's your professional story?
So, similar, Heather covered a lot of our overlap. I was born and raised in Taiwan, actually, which provided kind of a little bit of a different perspective, I guess, on the manufacturing world, as well as, sort of up and coming economy at the time. I came to the United States to study, and then I went and worked for another entrepreneur, actually, in the very beginning, and then decided to actually move to China after meeting Heather, before knowing that she was going to move there as well. And, I was focused in product supply chain, manufacturing for CPG companies around the world. And for myself, living in China, speaking the language, seeing the capabilities that were being sort of unveiled at the time. This is post the economic sort of crash. Everything's hard to put in perspective now after COVID. At the time, it was the biggest thing that had happened in our lifetimes for the economy. And, I think it was a time of change. And, I myself and Heather, we were friends and knew each other in Shanghai. And, I think I brought a unique sort of problem over Thanksgiving, I think, which was that we had this access to all these new technologies and these new materials that were sustainable or plastic alternatives, and that none of our clients were really interested in learning about them, adopting them, because it was too much of a lift to educate their consumers. It was a little bit more expensive, maybe, even though it might be more durable. And at the same time, I think sustainability was kind of looked at as a niche fad, something that maybe the right brand could take advantage of and get some market share. But real consumer products are all about price and function and nothing else. And, I think the combination of Heather's background, my own, and actually my brother's, who also, and another designer, actually, we all kind of sat down, and it kind of had this genesis that led to Heather and myself, starting the company and really saying, no, that's not the future of consumer products. The future of consumer products has to incorporate design, function, accessibility, and sustainability. You cannot be innovative without considering sustainability. And it was early. It was definitely a little bit early, which was good now in retrospect, but it was definitely a heavy lift at the time trying to educate whether retailers or consumers. So
are you seeing, so Full Circle Brands is, and I'd rather you explain it than I do, but I feel like you just kind of gave a good leeway into it. It's products for the home that don't sacrifice function or design, but also have a sustainability at the core, so to speak. Is that right? Is that what makes you different?
Absolutely. I mean, it's all about providing, consumers an option that's better for the world and themselves, both because the product works better, but also because it's better. It has, a smaller impact on our environment, whether through where the materials from the product come from or where they go. It's all about inspiring change. And the big mission behind what we do is we're trying to change the expectation consumers have from the brands they buy from. And that's really what we set out when we, started this business, was saying, okay, no, you cannot expect. It's funny now to think back on the idealistic 20-year-old, me and Heather, but it's, you cannot wait for brands to change things. You cannot wait for consumers to change behavior. You have to change things from the brands on down. You have to be the one providing the alternative. Otherwise, things will never change.
Yeah, it's it's interesting now because sustainability is such a top. I don't even want to say trend because that seems short term.
It's a generational shift. It really is.
Yep. And so the drivers, we talked a little bit with Heather. The drivers for sustainability, do you find it more future focused? Is it more of a health benefit? I just ordered a couple of your products, and part of the reason I ordered them was not so much to create less waste, but because of the materials that are used in them seem like they're better for my kids. What do you find as kind of top buying behaviors or top needs of your customers? Or is it a blend? Are you serving all the different kind of sides of the sustainability story with your brands?
I think that it probably started as, when you see where did, sustainability really kind of take hold in the household, or just in different, consumer industries, really organic foods, cleaning, chemicals, body care, and beauty. I think the motivation was largely health, and, less waste and impact was sort of the fringe benefit. And I think that's still part of the equation for sure, because I think that there's an understanding now that brands that are authentically creating more sustainable goods and using more responsible materials, and really it's less about what they make, but how they make it. Being a certified B Corp, it's about how we do business. It incorporates everything from, corporate governance and transparency to how we treat our employees and how we audit our factories and are vertically integrated in our supply chains, everything about how every component of our product is sourced. Yes, what you get is a very beautifully designed, sustainable product, but what you can feel good about putting your dollars towards is the company behind it. And so I think that in some sense, you had that feeling when you purchased our products. I feel like these are made from safer materials. And there's a bit of, because it's the holistic story, it's coming from a company that's thinking about all of those aspects of it. And I think that now, in addition to wanting to vote with your dollars and wanting to create a safer environment for your family, there is a growing portion of the population that does really want to reduce their footprint on the earth. I think between carbon emissions and understanding the waste issue in the U.S. and landfills and ocean plastic and all these things that are now really understood by the mainstream consumer. If they don't necessarily care and make their decisions on it, they at least have an understanding and awareness of it. So I think there are more and more people that are doing it purely for the sake of lower footprint, lower impact on the earth.
And Tail, to your point, you had talked about early on the need and the difficulty in educating and almost saying this is why we are needed, why this is important. Is that need lessening to some extent as the awareness grows and more stories come out about why this is so critical if we care about the future and future generations?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that barrier has been reduced. When we first started, there was and there's a lot of trailblazers within each sort of consumer product category that have really done a lot to further that. But there was a perception that organic or natural or green, eco, whatever people wanted to call things as they came out, was you were sacrificing something. right? And so you were trying to convince people that you care about the earth more than you care about the function of the product that you're buying. That's not the argument, right? That's totally wrong. That's an easy choice on a day-to-day basis. When you're taking care of your family, you're going to be like, well, obviously I'm going to do what's best for my family with the dollars I have. No, that perception is incorrect. That to be sustainable is to then be worse. That's the hump that took a lot to get over. There's so many examples of organic food is a great one, right? Today, I would argue that probably a lot of people think organics taste better than non-organics, right? Or that, I use this as a bit of an extreme example maybe, but a Tesla is not exactly a sacrifice on speed or function or performance for a car. There are a lot of examples of why us expanding our understanding of materials actually makes better product, not products that sacrifice function or form for that matter. You can look at furniture even, more expensive or more beautiful might be non-engineered, but natural, sustainable woods, for example. So, there's a ton of examples of, but 12 years ago, which doesn't seem that long ago, everything was so different in terms of perception when it came to a natural or sustainable product in any category, I think. So,
yeah, and I think what Heather talked about too, with the being genuine about it, with it being part of the core culture of the business, I think is so important, because I think the other thing, in addition to feeling like you're sacrificing something to have it be sustainable or good for the environment, I think there's another perception out there that's a lack of trust. Is this just a marketing gimmick? Is it just a ploy? Is it real? Am I actually doing something? Or is this just a label that was slapped on to get me to pay a little bit more, to convince me to buy it over somebody else? So, your products, I think, would be considered commodities if you look at them just in a general category, right? But is that the differentiator? Is that the difference? Is that with your business and what your mission and your values are, is that you're starting kind of with the goal of sustainability, and then you're not compromising those other things, and you're creating products that are just as good, if not better, than the alternatives, but they're built around doing the right thing for well-being of our families and for the world. Is that right?
I think that's part of it. They're not commodities because even something as simple as a sponge, which anybody can make, right? You're going to walk into a store and you're going to see sponges made by different companies making, different claims. I think that there is part of it that is like the company and the brand behind it and everything encompassing like what we do. But also, the tools that are designed, I definitely think that, there's probably very few things that are considered true commodities, because there's, I think, definitely ways to innovate. Good design is something you experience. And I always compare like the first time you use like a really great brush to clean your grout or something in your house is like the first time you used a really nice chef knife to chop vegetables. Like it makes a completely different perception of like your user experience. And I think that, we really think about, it's user-centered design, and we're always thinking about how to improve things, and really kind of that whole story, because you don't buy a dish brush because it's sustainable. You need it. You buy it because you wash dishes. And we know that. We know that the customer's like walking down the aisle really fast and like, oh, that's beautiful. It's at a great price. And it's going to work really well. And it's got all these amazing features. And I feel really good about the company I'm buying it from. Like, that is not the first decision-making point for the consumer. And so we have to think about that in everything we create and everything we design. And even something as simple as a sponge, we really think about it as almost an entry point to a lifestyle. And I know that sounds like making a very grandiose statement about like a sponge or a humble dish brush, but like we hope that the people that we're, appealing to, or the people who maybe have not taken that first step into buying more sustainable goods or thinking about the companies behind the products that they buy, and that we can be that entry point, and then they can feel great about that and then take the next step and the next step. And so we really kind of think about that journey and everybody's on a different part of their path, their sustainability journey, or living a better life, or whatever the types of improvements you're making. And we really, our products, even though they can be considered just very simple everyday goods, that's why it's almost more important for those like everyday goods that you don't even necessarily think about to have that kind of impact on your life, because we want people to think more intently about the products that they buy.
Mm-hmm. And talk to me a little bit more about that, the innovation piece, because like I said, I spent some time on your website. I think your branding's great. And I think part of it, like you said, is buying from a company you feel good about. But to your other point, if you're walking down the aisle and there's a bunch of bunch of sponges on the rack, you might not know that brand yet. You might not know the backstory or the sustainability impact. So from the packaging to the look, the feel of the product, from the design, how do you decide how you're going to create a product? How do you decide what's the next one going to be? What's the innovation process look like?
It's interesting you say innovation process. I think this is like the code that so many companies are trying to crack, is how to come up with a formula or a process to repeat innovation. And it comes from so many places. I think to come up with a new idea, I think one, you have to hone your sense of observation. I think you need to be taking inspiration from so many different places in the world. A lot of our most innovative products did not come from our industry. They brush and ceramic dish set that was inspired by like an old hot shaving kit that was in my father's barber shop. We started using this material called diatomaceous earth to absorb water in some of our bathroom products that we discovered actually is used. I weirdly discovered it in a horse barn, and now you're seeing it in other housewares products. So a lot of, innovation, I think sometimes that word has this like mystery attached to it and only belongs with product people and marketing people and the creative types. But, I think new ideas can come from anyone and anywhere. And it has to be part of your DNA as a company. Everyone in our company is expected to innovate. Sometimes innovation is iteration, right? Making like something better than it was before and continuing to do that. And innovation can happen in inventory planning and go to market and, every part of our organization. When we're hiring, new people in, I say everyone's expected to be an entrepreneur here. You're expected to sort of own your part of the business. And I think when you foster an environment where people feel like their ideas are going to be heard and likely implemented, that really creates a culture and a motivation for everyone to bring innovative ideas to the table in every part of the organization. It doesn't have to sort of live only with people with like innovation in my title and sort of play in their own sandbox. It's expected of everybody. And I think once people see everyone contributing to that process and it being implemented and making the whole organization better, it really kind of just becomes a flywheel.
Yeah, I love those examples you gave of product ideas coming from other industries or from outside of the normal places that you might think they came, that you might be looking. So that's really cool. And also I agree, innovation probably needs to start at the top, but if you create a culture of innovation and encourage it throughout all of your team, I think you're going to exponentially do more or come up with more ideas, and also being willing to listen to them, right? Be receptive and be willing to take some risks. Have you guys had some innovative ideas that didn't work out quite so well? I mean, how often are you guys, I see a lot of products behind you. Heather, how many times is a product created that then is said, this doesn't really pass the full circle brand quality test?
You definitely have to be okay with failure. You can't have a big ego and be innovative. You have to be okay with the idea. And sometimes you have the seed of an idea and someone else can take it and run with it. And sometimes you take it almost all the way and then you realize it's just not going to cut it. So you can't have that sort of ego that, I've already dumped all of this, energy into it. It must go forward. We really have gates. Speaking specifically about product, we have gates in our process where everyone in the company weighs in. Everyone is involved in our product development process, and everyone has the opportunity to say that's a bad idea if necessary. And so we definitely have had some things that we maybe even thought were, great ideas and launched, and our customers told us. But it happens sometimes. You bring something up to a certain stage and then you realize it's not checking those boxes. We're really not solving a functional problem here, adding something to the market. There needs to be a reason for it to exist. It needs to be an improvement upon what's out there, or, markedly more sustainable than any other option, or helping, the customer change a behavior to a more sustainable lifestyle. And if it really doesn't check all those boxes, we're not going to launch it. Sure. And we've had some things that we've definitely, dumped in the past because it didn't pass the test.
Well, I always wanted to put a wall of shame. Heather hates it, but it's just like the cool ideas that you sometimes personally fall in love with that just end up not making it. But I will say we get a lot better with time. That's for sure.
Well, and I think that's important too, is the wall of shame products were probably the ones that inspired or bettered the products that are behind Heather, right? Those are the lessons learned. Although I will say, or I'd like to add, I mean, for a company that's small, that's growing, that's not one of the major corporations of America or the United States government, to Heather's past, innovation's probably a little harder, right? To take risks without a lot to fall back on if they fail. How did you handle that, especially early on when you were starting out? How did you make the right decisions and take calculated risks, knowing that if it didn't work out, there wasn't a lot of room for retreating?
Interesting. I actually think about it the opposite way. I think in our earlier days, there's a sense of this has to work, and it's not necessarily that you're taking bigger risks. I think that you have more motivation to do everything you can, everything you need to do to figure out what is going to make you successful. And I think that drive is something that perhaps as you grow and become more successful, you can become a little bit complacent. So I think it's super important to hold on to those roots of having that drive, that ambition, to really do everything you can to make sure you're launching the right product to the right customer, and serving and supporting them ongoing on their journey. Because I think, if you become very successful and a little complacent, there's going to be someone smaller, more innovative coming right up behind you.
More mobile.
Yeah, that's really well said. And I think that's why it's so important that you say we encourage everyone at our organization to be an entrepreneur. We try to instill a culture of innovation. It's easy to say that. I mean, I think a lot of companies probably say that, but to try to maintain that urgency, the need to succeed that you have when you first start your business, I think that's really, really important. It's probably how companies that continue to experience exponential growth are doing it. That's probably one of the key ingredients for success. Tail, you had talked about the financial crisis, and we all have just gone through 2 years of pandemic. So 2 periods of great change and challenge. Talk a little bit about how you managed your business throughout something like COVID-19. How did you stay the course? How did you learn from the hurdles that we faced? What was it like at Full Circle Brands over the last couple of years?
Yeah, well, it certainly hasn't been the most relaxing couple of years. It's been a roller coaster. Especially being in New York City in the very beginning, the fear was just so damaging on a personal level for all of our employees, right? I mean, between being either stuck in Manhattan or Queens or Brooklyn or wherever people were, the fear over trains and any kind of travel outside in a very, populated, area of the country. I think really the very beginning, the focus was on our organization, our team. It was really about saying, okay, what's going to happen to everybody, right? how is everybody going to feel about what's happening? In a sense of saying, okay, we don't know what's going to happen, right? We didn't know if business was going to completely just collapse. That some of our major retailers were closing, refusing orders that they had placed, and you didn't know what was coming. We sort of made a decision very early on, I think in the first couple of weeks, was that we weren't going to let anybody go. Not in the beginning, not out of fear. Obviously, if things got to a point that we had to, we would have come to that point. We decided that we weren't out of fear going to protect, the bottom line, and do something that we would never, feel good about or forgive ourselves for. So, we stuck to that. And then we tried to really, I think this is in the very beginning, it was really a people issue. It was about meeting our employees, our team where they were. Everybody had a different level of insecurity or fear or, whatever it might be. And it was about trying to stabilize our work environment. Obviously we started to work from home. It was about being a source of information. Some people were really, in tune with what was going on, and others weren't. And, we set up, weekly meetings where we, sort of dove into the situation in New York City outside of what we do for a living, but just around, us as a community, about how things were going and, where resources could be found and what people could do. If they didn't feel comfortable, for example, like leave the city, for example, and all, everything went out the window, all, in terms of how our work environment existed before. If we were in cleaning, and as probably most people know, the beginning of the pandemic ended up not being bad for cleaning because everybody was at home, desperately looking to clean their houses nonstop. So, we did end up with almost a boost through the beginning part of COVID. But for us, it was a lot of it was adapting as quickly as we could to sort of the unknown, being okay with people making suggestions for what worked best for them, and trying to just meet everybody where they were. That's close.
And today, I mean, we still are. Well, I think we're learning to live with the pandemic. That we're fortunate, at least for now, that the variants seem less severe. So I think that's been a big part in alleviating the fear. But we're still faced with a lot of challenge, right? Logistics, supply chain, global instability, climate change. I mean, you name it. There's plenty to keep us up at night. Right, exactly. And so what I think you're completely right that in the beginning the uncertainty was the biggest factor, and how quickly everything was changing, and that communication was key, and really being people focused was so important. I applaud you for the decisions you made early on. Is that something that you're able to kind of take what you learned in 2020 and throughout 2021, and now, given some of the challenges we're facing today and that we may be facing for who knows how long, you're able to kind of build that into your leadership style and kind of, I don't want to say future-proof, but take what we learned and apply it to being a better leader today?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we did a couple things. On an organizational level, what we've tried to learn is to be very flexible, right? We have a permanent hybrid work situation where we try to take the best of what the pandemic taught us about remote work and people's ability to really work from anywhere, and also take the best of the pre-COVID situation, which was creative, inspiring moments together. So we also have an office to meet in. On an organizational level, that has worked very well for us and provides flexibility for future situations. We've incorporated EOS, an operating system, that has allowed for a level of transparency that we didn't have before as an organization. So, allowing everybody to really know what's going on in the company, what everybody's roles and responsibilities are, where they sit within the organization, easy access to data, and really have that, and that's something that, really we did start before COVID, but really fast tracked into sort of the new work world. I think one of the major things, and, we're not sort of in the post-COVID world, we're in the, I don't know, the second half. I don't know. It's always, every day is a different guess, but, is to know, it's both seeing, and I don't mean to sound callous about the situation for everybody, knowing the suffering that a lot of families went through. But, part of as an organization is seeing when things are so turbulent is knowing where, your business might suffer, but also knowing how your business can adapt, not to take advantage of the situation, but to be able to at least survive and thrive to a point, through different behaviors, through, changing sort of preferences, and to be there to be able to see, okay, well, this is how we're going to navigate our way through this. If we can't sell at some of the existing places because they've been shut down, well, how do we pivot more to grocery? How do we pivot more online to be able to provide the access our consumers looking for at home?
Yeah, 100%. The agility piece is really important. I think that's what a lot of companies are. They were forced to change, and now they've said, okay, well, some of these changes are good, right? And we need to be able to continue to do this. And when the next crisis hits, we need to be able to change faster than we did before. So I think that's completely right. You talked about hybrid, your working environment's hybrid now. As an interiors company, I'm interested to know what kind of work is being done when people come in to meet in person. I know New York's a lot like Chicago in that we've had some pretty strict lockdowns, but opening back up now where people actually have the choice and they're not mandated to be out, remote. What's driving people into the office?
Certainly, communicating with departments that they don't usually see. One of the problems that we have with with the remote environment is it's like meeting fatigue, right? And especially it's meeting fatigue with the people that you work intimately with, maybe that's the wrong word, but so closely with, right? It's really like you see your teammates, whether it's your manager or, your team, multiple times a day. You don't have that casual bump into between PD, product development, and say, finance, or between operations and say sales. You don't have that sharing of ideas or problems or, sitting down. We're a physical product company. It is very hard to wait for everybody to submit comments, about their experience with a product versus all being in the same room, touching it, seeing what they like, what they don't like, what doesn't resonate. How is this shade of, gray off, but just a little bit when compared to the ceramic white? There's so much that goes into physical product that involves being, in a creative environment, in an in-person environment, touching, feeling, talking about it. And that's not just for, product development or sales or marketing. It also exists in problem solving for operations, for finance. Being able to just to be in person and to have those creative moments. And we've us along with others, we've tried to instill now, when you're in the office, you don't sit on Zoom for the whole time you're in the office, right? Because you find that people do that. You actually, we're trying to clear away, except for obviously urgent meetings, but anything that can't be done in person is not something you do when you're in the office. You only do things that you need to do in person in the office. You kind of switch your brain a little bit.
Are you encouraging people to all kind of come to the office on specific days so that you get those accidental collisions where, between people that don't normally connect with one another, or is it more of a free-for-all and it's serendipitous if that happens?
No, originally we did sort of like a alternating schedule, thinking that people would be more comfortable. But actually, it was sort of we tried to do a lot of feedback loops with our team to see what kind of where everybody's at. probably too many to be honest, but we're always kind of asking them, what are they feeling? What are they feeling? And one of the major things was like, they're like, listen, I want to come into the office, but it doesn't make sense for me to come to the office if not everybody's there.
Right.
And it didn't mean like, we have hybrid employees, people that go away for a month and they're working wherever they want. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But, within reason to say, okay, if you're in the area, like this is Wednesday, like come to the office on Wednesday, assuming you're comfortable. And this is the day that everybody's going to be there. And that way you do have those moments. So certainly that was definitely one of the biggest things from feedback, was to say, like, I only want to be there really because everybody's there, not because I want to be like so silent while I'm there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's consistent with what we're seeing too. If the 6 feet of separation and the physical distance thing is not critical, and people feel safe when they're there, I think we've seen the same thing. It's people make the place. And if you're coming into the place and there's no people, then why are you in the place? Right.
Exactly.
So yeah, well said. All right. We're getting close to the end of the hour. I want to ask you guys a couple personal questions. Heather, let's start with you. What's one thing you're looking forward to this year?
Let's see. I mean, I think just being able to connect more with people at really simple things like a company happy hour and dinner with friends that I took for granted before just brings so much joy now. Especially eating out in a restaurant and not having to like clean up afterwards after, 2 years at home with 3 kids. But just those simple pleasures, it doesn't need to be an exotic trip, just, face-to-face connection with friends and family, and being able to make those plans and do more of that, with the people here that we work with and family and friends in the area as well.
Cheers to that. Taylor, how about you?
We got a company Yankees game coming up, and it's a funny small thing that feels like kind of like a big milestone. We used to do those all the time. That's definitely something I'm really looking forward to. I think the holidays this year too. I think this year, the last 2 years have been tough for a lot of people. It's been a lot of trying to figure out, just on an employee level too, like what are people looking for, and for them, like what am I looking for? I've been stuck in whatever repeating like situation for the last 2 years. I think, it's just kind of getting out of this weird sort of transitionary time and just being kind of back,
Yeah. Yeah. It's odd how the last 2 years have seemed like it's been a forever period, but also it's just gone by very quickly. It's the time has become very confusing over the pandemic. Yeah. How about a piece of advice you would give to your team if you were retiring today? I know you guys have a long road of success ahead of you. So this is an odd question, but if you were going to retire, what's a word of wisdom you would leave behind?
I tell people all the time to trust their gut. I mean, when you're making critical business decisions, there's data that can inform you. But I think, in our business, we've done so much on our intuition. I think when you are like observing and taking in different perspectives all the time, it sort of passively sort of feeds these decisions that you make in a way. And so you're not just making the decisions based on emotion, but if you're collecting all these experiences and all this feedback, I think that you actually, if you're open to that and you're receiving it and you're listening, those gut decisions, those gut feelings that you have generally are coming from somewhere, and you should trust them. I find a lot of times when people like have an intuition here that they should do something and they check with me, like 99% of the time I agree and they're right. So I think it's just everyone I think needs a little bit more like sort of confidence in their ability to like make decisions and that they know what they're doing and they can move forward.
That's great. Taylor, how about you?
Ooh, there's a lot of those. I definitely think, on the one hand, I think, perspective is everything, and something that seems like it's going to just tear everything down only feels that way until that moment has gone. And it sometimes doesn't, it sometimes doesn't matter what the result's going to be. It's about how you pick yourself up and you keep going, because what seems massive like 2 years ago doesn't even seem like a big deal now, right? And you made it through both things. So it's just about having perspective, being able to really just see the other side, see that you're going to come out. And I think the other one is I always feel more, the older I get, is just trust the people that know more than you do within your organization. It's about trusting the experts, right? And every person here is an expert at something. And, I think that relying on each other and trusting the people that know more is really just, is such a comforting place to be, that they have your back and they know probably more than you do about that specific subject. So lean on those people.
It's really interesting, the three pieces of advice that you guys just gave. The retrospect, look at, it's tough in the moment, but after you get through it, it seems like a distant memory, and the perspective piece, I think that is so true. But so difficult sometimes to acknowledge in the moment of hardness, right? To be able to see through it. And then what you said, Heather, about trusting your gut, combined with Tail saying, trust those with the experience. I think the combination of that is so useful. I think that's why it's so important to have a mentor or to find leaders that you trust, because those moments where you disagree with them, and then to have the experience where you then get to the other side of it and you're like, oh, this is why they said that. This is where that experience came into play. And to fine tune your gut, I think that just makes you so much more effective down the road. So I think that's great advice. I appreciate that. And I want to finish with this last question. Hopefully it's easy, because I think that there's probably many answers you could give. But if you were going to recommend a resource that has been helpful to you in your professional journey, whether it's a book or a podcast or a group, what would you recommend to others?
I'm not doing a plug here for an organization, but I think a business operating system like EOS, for me, that kind of resource, committing to any kind of operating system, EOS has been awesome for us. Traction is a great book that explains a lot about it. I think it's given us a lot of the tools that we needed to keep the organization informed, well-oiled during a very turbulent time. So now I could give there's a bunch of great resources and Harvard Business Review articles, but I think honestly, that's been from my perspective, the most useful tool through all of this, that has really helped.
How about you, Heather?
I think particularly for entrepreneurs, but probably, anyone at a senior level of an organization is developing the right peer group around you as a sounding board. I know Tal's really benefited from being part of Entrepreneurs Organization. I've recently joined Chief, and in really just a few short weeks, I've developed an incredible network of people that I've already been leaning on and supporting them as well. So I think having that a peer network there, you can, share your business challenges and bounce ideas off of them. Someone outside of your organization that can really give you, a different perspective, objective view has been really helpful.
And maybe those people will help inspire one of your future products, right?
Right.
Outside of your organization. Well, I appreciate all this insight, all the perspective. I think you've got a great mission, and I'm excited to try out some of your products here when they arrive. Can't thank you both enough for the time you've committed to being on the show and for the advice and inspiration you've shared. So thank you for being on Work Inspired.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation, please take a moment to rate our show. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the Work Inspired podcast so that you don't miss any of the incredible guests we have planned for upcoming episodes. We'll continue to find the best and brightest minds in business so that you can learn, grow, and succeed, and so that we can all work inspired. Work Inspired is brought to you by BOS, a leader in commercial working environments and a Hayworth best-in-class dealership. Experience our 360 approach and discover the team, tools, and techniques required to navigate the complexity of your next workspace at BOS.com. If you have ideas, feedback, or would like to be featured on our show, please email podcast@BOS.com. Thank you for listening. This has been a Workspace digital production. If you're interested in launching a podcast at your organization, please email info@workspace.digital for a free consultation.